Hello guys and welcome back to the channel. I am Fit Mum Vlogs because I am trying to start a fitness journey. I'm trying to get back into calisthenics and I have just recently become a mum to this little angel of a boy. I say little angel, it is currently 6.5 weeks postpartum. He is 6 weeks and 4 days old now. Wow. 6 weeks and 4 days old, and it has been a challenging first 6 weeks for many different reasons, which I will cover briefly in my newborn diaries, but I'm not really getting that much into it because I'm trying to focus more oh dear on my fitness content. The dry cough gives you an example of how challenging the first 6 weeks have been. I've not been well for a couple of them. Anyway, I'll try and get through this video as best I can without coughing, but today is actually my birth story because I did do a birth vlog, but it was very short, very brief, and didn't really cover much information about what went on because everything happened so quickly. So freaking quickly. I got told by so many people and I read everywhere that 90% of the time, first-time mums are usually late. Labour takes ages because your body doesn't really know what to do because it's the first time, so expect it to take a while. And even all the birth vlogs I watched, people were in labour for like 4 to 5 days. Some people were in labour for up to 2 weeks. Some people were in labour non-stop at like 4 centimetres for 48 hours. So I was prepared. I was mentally prepared for 2 days of absolute torturous pain. And that didn't happen. That did not happen. In fact, I had the complete opposite of what a lot of first-time mums actually experience when they go through labour for the first time. Mine was very quick, very fast, and very efficient and early, to say the least. But before I actually go over a brief summary and end up spoiling some of the things that actually happened, I did actually write notes on my phone, so I'm going to actually get those up now and try and explain to you guys as best as possible what actually happened from the get-go. I have also tried my best to put timestamps on here to remind me what time things actually started happening. Hopefully that'll give you guys a better idea of how the day went. This story is also going to be slightly dependent on how long this little man stays asleep. Hopefully he will stay asleep quite a while. Hopefully through my coughing. On Wednesday, the 14th of January, is when it all started. 14th of January, the whole day, we were just chilling, we were relaxing. I think I actually covered it in my birth vlog, what we got up to that day. I can't remember. Things started happening from the Monday. My hips started hurting more. They started feeling stretched. My hips started feeling really stretched on the Monday, to the point where I was not even being able to exercise very much. I was just resting on my exercise ball and doing a lot of stretches just to try and widen the hips and just try and make them a bit more comfortable. But I didn't realise that this was my body potentially going into labour, and I was just going with the flow. I was just trying to do anything just to ease the ache that was in my pelvis. Nothing really helped per se, but there were some things I did to relieve the discomfort temporarily, which was nice. So if you want to have a look at the ball stretches I was doing, or the ball exercises I've been doing, or the hip exercise I've been doing, go have a look at my 3rd trimester vlog catch-ups, or my 3rd trimester vlogs where I've been doing exercise in them. You'll know which ones they are because I always put a snippet of some of the exercise in the thumbnail, and that'll give you an idea of the kind of exercises I was doing to help release or reduce the tension in my hips and help keep them wide and help keep them relaxed. And I do honestly think that all the exercises I did on the build up to birth have actually helped in what happened on the Thursday. Anyway, Tuesday or Wednesday came around. I can't really remember what happened on one of those days, but I remember that one of the days, I think it was the Wednesday, I did some exercise, which I've been doing through my whole pregnancy. My exercises started off quite simple, quite basic. It was whatever I was doing at the time. We didn't really get to do a lot of exercise in the 1st trimester and stuff like that. But towards the 3rd trimester, I was more focused on stretches. So again, hip stretches, hip flexor stretches, hamstring stretches, squats became a big one, hip thrusts became a big one, anything to strengthen and support the pelvic area became a very big priority for me, especially because I was experiencing pelvic girdle pain. And I was doing those stretches on Wednesday evening, I believe it was. And I had noticed throughout the day that little man's movements hadn't been normal. He'd still been moving once or twice, but they weren't his regular moving periods. They were slightly off time and they were slightly lazier than usual, which automatically was a, do I need to contact the midwife team about this? Do I need to contact triage about this? Because he is still moving, but there's just something off about it. There's just something off about the movements, and I can't quite put my finger on what it is. And I decided to put it off. I decided so long as I can still feel him moving for the next 24 hours, if nothing has changed in the next 24 hours, then I'll give triage a ring, which if you feel no movements whatsoever, definitely ring triage immediately. Don't do what I did and wait. It could be a signal of something else. It could be a signal that something's wrong. But for me, he was still fairly active. His movement pattern was just off time and slightly longer apart than usual, which I found unusual, but I decided to just give it till the next day and see what happens, which is not recommended because a lot of things can go wrong in 24 hours. I was just unsure because I couldn't work out whether or not this was normal or wasn't normal. I probably should have actually got on my suspicions, but we're here now. Then at 10:30 p.m, I was messaging my friends and we were having a chat and having a laugh. And up until this point of the pregnancy, for the previous 2.5-3 weeks, I've been colostrum harvesting. And I mentioned to my friends that that particular night, I had harvested 3 syringes in one sitting, which was a huge amount. What was it? 3 mils? 3 mils of colostrum in one harvest, which was absolutely huge. 3 syringes of colostrum is a lot. It's a hell of a lot for one harvest. And I noticed that towards the end of the colostrum harvest, the colostrum on my right boob had actually started going slightly white in colour, which apparently is normal. Colostrum can vary in colour, supposedly from clear to yellow to milky coloured, depending on what kind of colostrum it is, but I didn't think anything of it because that apparently is normal. Now, me and Jason had been saying since day one that he was going to be late. We were going to make it to 41 weeks and we were going to be fine. We just needed to wait for Jason to pass his course. All first babies are late, on average come around the 41 week and 3 day marker. So we were chilling, we were resting, we were laughing and joking. We were thinking that nothing was going to happen. But when I mentioned to my friends that I had harvested 3 syringes in one go, one of my friends joked that I wasn't going to make it to 41 weeks. She said, "No, Ash, you're coming a lot sooner. He's coming a lot sooner than you think he is." And I was still saying, no, it's definitely going to be late. I was 3 weeks late. Jason was 2 weeks late. Both of my sisters were pretty late. All my first nieces and nephews have been late. He's going to be late. We have a history of late babies in our family. Babies don't come early in our family. Boy, was I wrong, because not 1 hour after my friend made that joke. So again, that was at 10:30 p.m. that my friend made that joke. Me and Jason were actually on our way to bed. I was actually cleaning my teeth at that point. And we then got into bed, we settled down. Jason did a Jason and conked out immediately. He was fast asleep. We had planned to have, I think it was a game day the following day because it was one of the few days he wasn't going to be in work for the rest of the week. Or was he in work the next day? No, Thursday was his very rare day off. He was going to enjoy a nice long lie-in and a nice long sleep to recuperate from all the work, from everything that happened the week before, from Christmas and all the stress of New Year. So he put his head down at about 11:20 because we always take a few minutes to wind down and calm down and just try and turn our brains off before we go to sleep. That's what we did. We had a bit of a wind down and a calm down. He hit his head down at about 11:15, 11:20 and he was out. He started snoring almost immediately and he always does. I don't know how he does it. He puts his head on that pillow and he passes out and he's gone. I, on the other hand, am not so lucky. I take a while to go to sleep, so while he was passed out, I took a few more minutes just to read a bit more of my book. Didn't think anything of it. I realised, hang on a minute, Minion hasn't had his 11 o'clock wiggle. For those of you that are new to this video, this channel, Minion is the nickname we gave to baby boy while he was in my tummy because we knew he was going to be Jason's little minion. So I was starting to get a little bit worried, and I was already debating calling triage at this point because he hadn't had his 7 o'clock wiggle and he just missed his 11 o'clock wiggle because this boy was on time. This boy had very specific timings through the day that he would move. And he wasn't always perfectly on time. Sometimes it was an hour before, sometimes it was an hour after, but he always had his wiggling time slots, and he'd missed his 7 o'clock one and he just missed his 11 o'clock one. So I was starting to get a little very cautious, and I was already on the verge of considering ringing triage. But about 11:35, I started needing the toilet. And this is normal for me. I quite often need the toilet right before bed, or my bladder decides to try and go to the toilet 3 times before I actually need to go to sleep. It likes to know that it's empty before I crash out. Especially when you're pregnant and you got a baby pressing down there, you go to the toilet a lot. So 11:35, I got up and I went to the toilet. I sat down, I weed as I normally do, which I'm sorry, TMI for the men. That's how it works. I had a wee, I dried off, and I stood up. And as I stood up from the toilet, I felt what could only be described as a water bomb, like a water balloon, just going out of me. Literally stood up, and it's like a water balloon just got let go from my nether region and went plop into the water in the toilet. And I was so confused because I heard it. I felt like this weird water balloon drop sensation, and I had no idea what it was. I'm like, I've just finished weeing. That wasn't a wee. That didn't come from my urethra because I have a overactive bladder and a very sensitive bladder and urethra, so I can tell when I'm weeing. And that did not come out of my urethra. That was not from the front end. That just sort of appeared. And my brain went frazzled. It's like, did that? Was that? Could that have been? Wait a minute. I had a bit of a minor what in the world just happened moment, and I was in disbelief because I was honestly, truly convinced he was going to be a week late, and at this point it was 4 days ahead of when he was due. So I was definitely trying to work out any possible way it couldn't have been my water, but at the same time trying to work out if it was my water. I got a bit of tissue, I dried up down there, and when I looked at the tissue, because that is always recommended to do if you suspect your water's breaking, always check the colour of the fluid. When I checked the tissue, the liquid was clear with a slight tinge of pink. In fact, there was a fair bit of tinge of pink. It was a very pale pink, but there was a tinge of pink. And I sat there thinking, this is not what people have told me. I've been told that your water will either be green if it contains meconium, yellow, or with a slight tinge of yellow, or clear, not pink. Pink was never in the description. So I had a quick Google online, and it does say that pink can be in your water if you have a little bit of blood or water when your waters break because of the lining starting to come away around the cervix. So it was possible that it was my waters breaking, but it was just that one quick plop. There was nothing else. And the amount of people that describe your waters breaking as the water just dribbling and just coming and coming, but this was just one big plop and then it sort of stopped. So I'm sat there thinking about it going, what do I do? Hang on a minute. What do I do? Because if it is my water, I need to ring triage. I need to ring them straight away. But if it's not my water, it could be just me panicking. But then if it wasn't my water, what was it? Could it have been my mucus plug? No, it couldn't have been my mucus plug because my mucus plug is meant to be mucusy and pluggy. I might have to put you down, bud, because my arm is starting to hurt, sweetheart. Let's see if you'll go down. Yeah. No? Don't want to go down? Want to stay with me? Yeah. Yeah, I want to stay with mummy. Okay. We'll change positions. 1 minute. There we go. He's at that stage where he doesn't want to be put down at the moment. Where was I? Wondering if it was my mucus plug. So I double checked and there was no mucus, there was no goop, there was no thick jelly-like substance to suggest it was my mucus plug. So there was a much higher likelihood that it was actually my waters breaking. That was a big burp. That was a big burp. We're choking on our burps now. Oh, that's a big yawn. Are we tired? It's so hard to try and get anything done when they're at this age. Good boy. Yeah. Where are you going? It took me about 10 to 15 minutes to work out what to do because my brain was frazzled and it needed a second just to think. Another thought that was going through my head is, if it is my waters breaking, how am I going to tell Jason? Because he's just this second gone to bed. Hi! And you just this second woke up, haven't you? Ooh. Because Jason's only just gone to bed. He's only just gone to sleep. So how the heck am I going to tell him? Because this is really bad timing because both of us have been awake since 7 a.m. and we've now got to potentially drive to hospital. I eventually got my thoughts together. I came downstairs so as not to disturb him, and I just rang triage because I didn't see the point in disturbing him and waking him if it wasn't my waters breaking and it was just my mucus plug and there was nothing to panic about. I say panic about. There was no panicking. So at around 11:50, I rang triage. I asked them or explained to them what had happened, what I'd felt, what the water colour was looking like. And they did say to me, it does sound like your waters may have broken, but we're going to have to get you to come in and get checked just to be 100% sure. I also mentioned that Minion had had reduced movements and that it was unusual. He'd missed his 2 movements since 7 o'clock. And they said, okay, well, definitely need to come in then because we'll have to put you on monitoring just to see what's going on. Okay, fine, no problem. At this point, my brain is electric. Literally electric. I am on fire. I'm running around thinking, oh my God, my waters might have just broken. Oh my God, my waters might have just broken. If my waters are broken, he's going to be here within 48 hours. And there's no ifs, ands or buts, because if your waters break, there is a high risk of infection if baby doesn't come out quickly. So you have 24 hours for your body to actually try and go into labour naturally from the moment your waters break. If your body fails to go into labour naturally, you do get induced and you do not get a choice about it. Well, I say you don't get a choice about it. You technically do have a choice, but you're highly pressured because the risk of infection skyrockets. And then if you haven't gone into labour within 48 hours, you're pretty much rushed into an emergency C-section from your waters breaking to avoid any further risk of infection, because if you do get infected, you and baby's life is at risk and they're not willing to take that risk. So I knew that if it was my waters, he was going to be there within the next 48 hours, or he was going to arrive within the next 48 hours. There was no ifs, ands or buts. He was coming and he was going to be here by Saturday at the latest. Sorry, Friday at the latest. So I headed upstairs and I woke Jason up and he rolled over. I was like, what's going on? Like, say if Jason was like asleep here, he's like, what? Like completely half asleep, not really focusing on what's going on. And I said to him, I've just had to ring triage. My waters may have broken. We need to go in hospital now and get checked. And he's looking at me going, like, brain computing, brain half asleep, brain not thinking right now. And then it finally clicked in as to what I was saying, and he was like, right, okay, no problem. He got up and he very kindly got dressed. We grabbed my hospital bag as a precaution. There was no guarantee that anything was going to happen, but something of my sixth senses was telling me, take it just in case. I have a suspicion, take it just in case. We made sure to pack the baby carrier just in case. We made sure to grab all the snacks, grab the phone chargers and everything that we hadn't yet packed in the hospital bag. About 12 o'clock-ish, we started heading en route to triage. Triage was about a 20-minute drive away, which isn't very far, and because it was the middle of the night, there was no traffic, which we were so grateful for. And because it was the middle of the night, it meant there was almost tons of car parking spaces at the hospital directly. So we could actually park in the labour bays, right outside of triage, which made it so much easier and less stressful. It was so nice. On the way to triage, I got 2 tightenings, and tightenings are basically your stomach muscles contracting. I assumed they were Braxton Hicks because they felt like Braxton Hicks. They were around the lower back and the lower abdomen. They didn't feel any different to the Braxton Hicks I've been having for the last few weeks on the build up to that day. But it was unusual for me to have 2 in the space of 20 minutes, but didn't think anything of it. They didn't last very long. They only lasted a few seconds, but I did definitely notice them. This is his favourite position to nap, is right in the middle of my chest. We finally got to triage at about 12:30. They literally brought me straight in. They sent me straight into one of the rooms, and again, because it was the middle of the night, I was the only one there. It was great. I got put into a room, I got strapped up to the monitors, I got strapped up to the vitals. I think they were monitoring his heart rate and also contractions. They also put a blood pressure monitor on me. Are we getting hungry? He's looking for the boob. One moment, I'll feed him while I'm talking to you, because otherwise I'm never going to get this story done. Have you changed your mind? Are we asleep again? That can't be a comfy position. Apparently it is. Anyway, I got put on a blood pressure machine, and they also give me this little buttony thing to basically press it anytime I felt movement, which I thought that's what one of the monitors did anyway, which apparently it sort of does, but that was more, could I feel the movement versus what he was actually doing. Just before they actually left me, they had a quick poke and a prod around. They asked me a load of questions about what it felt like and what happened on the run up and why I thought it was my waters, or what happened to make me suspect it was my waters. You trying to suffocate yourself again? You good at that? That was a big fart. This boy is so wriggly. So wriggly. Anyway, they asked me a load of questions, and as part of the check, they also had a big poke and prod around to work out where he was, what he was doing, and what he was up to. And that seemed to wake him up, because suddenly he started moving again. And my God, did he move. He was having a full-on protest at that point. He was like, how dare you disturb me? I was having a damn good nap, thank you. And he was wriggling, he was punching, and he was moving for a good amount of time after that. He actually had an extra long movement session after that, thanks to them poking and prodding him. So I was monitored for approximately 1 hour. Half an hour I was lay upright on my back, so I was actually on a vertical chair. And then for the other half an hour, I was lay on my side for monitoring. So I don't know whether or not that's because I was in the 3rd trimester and I was close to labour, so they didn't want me putting too much pressure on my back veins, so they don't want you on your back for too long, which is why they probably tossed me on my side. I wasn't complaining. The side was a lot more comfortable than lying on my back. My God, the back was uncomfortable. So according to my notes, I had multiple tightenings while I was actually being monitored, which I still thought were Braxton Hicks, because they were still the lower back and front of the abdomen, and they were still very irregular. So I had no reason to believe they weren't. I just really noticed that they were suddenly very, very noticeable. They were still no different to like a mild period cramp, like a really mild period cramp, but I could feel them. I could definitely feel something in my stomach going, eh. They came back in and checked the monitors. They said that his heart rate looked absolutely fine. The monitor across the top of my stomach suggested that I wasn't having contractions yet. So the tightenings I was having, or the tightenings they said I was experiencing, could be in early labour or pre-labour, or the suggestion that contractions would be starting at some point, or that my body was trying to go into labour, or it could have just been Braxton Hicks and my body still practising. According to the monitor, it wasn't contractions, and they said because his movements had returned to normal, because his heart rate was fine, and because because it doesn't look like contractions, it could still take a while. However, because my waters had broken, they were concerned about, again, the risk of infection. So they said that if contractions hadn't started by 11:30 p.m. that night, or Thursday night, then I would have to go, I would have to go back in and get induced. So I said, yep, fine, not a problem, that's all good. And again, I was expecting a good at least 12 hours before I would need to come back in. So I was looking forward to going home and labouring at home. As I stood up off the bed in order to leave, a lot of water suddenly came out, and I do mean a lot of water suddenly came out. Like, they had actually given me a pad when I first went in so that they could actually check for, or so that they could actually see any fresh liquid that come out and work out whether or not it was my waters breaking because of that and not my mucus plug or some urine and stuff like that. This water, this literal whoosh of water that came out of me when I stood up, drenched me. It went through the pad. It soaked the pad. The pad was fully inflated and drenched. It was down both of my legs, the front of my legs, the back of my legs. It had splashed slightly up and was rising up my stomach where the material was all connected. I was drenched. I literally just looked like I had gone waddling through a river. I'm not even kidding. The amount of water that was just suddenly down my clothes was ridiculous. And I was just thinking I'd weed myself. I was thinking, well, they just said my waters have definitely broken. I don't remember if I actually mentioned that part, but they did confirm my waters had broken. So now I am absolutely drenched. So I said to them, could I have another pad, please? And they opened the drawer and there wasn't any pads in the drawer. So they went out, got me one and brought me one back. I then had to do a very embarrassing, very wet, waddly walk to the toilets, because the toilet wasn't in the room, it was outside the room, and had to go change the pad. When I went to change the pad that I was wearing had a teeny tiny little blood clot in it. Now, the problem is, the doctor had just told me in the room, as they were telling me I could go home, because there's not any blood clots in my pad, they're not concerned and I can go home. There was now a blood clot in my pad after the whooshing of the water. I took the pad to triage receptionists, and that is where the doctor was actually having a chat to see what to do about me, or informing upstairs about what was going on with me. She took a look at it and went, that is a blood clot. It's only a tiny one, but that is a blood clot. That changes the situation slightly. So I went back in the room and I waited patiently, and the tightening starting to get a bit stronger at this point. And I started to need to lean on things because of these tightenings, because they were cramping now. That's the best way to describe it. They were cramps and they were cramping. So we waited a bit longer, and then finally they came in and said, right, because there is a blood clot, there is a slight chance of hemorrhaging. It might not be, it might just be that when the water has literally flushed out at high speed, it's just pulled a little bit of the lining away with it. We can't take that risk. There is a high chance of hemorrhage. We would much rather admit you and have you upstairs where we can monitor you every few hours just to make sure everything's okay. We said, yes, we kind of expected that after our earlier conversation. We went into a lot of details in the conversation about risks and factors and stuff like that before they agreed to send me home. But obviously now I couldn't go home. I had to be admitted because of this teeny tiny little blood clot. So we said, yes, that's fine, we understand, no problem. And we gathered our things and we then followed the midwives up to the labour ward. Now, the labour ward was a multi-person ward because it's the NHS. Unless you're very rich or you go private, you can't really get single rooms, or unless there's risk of infection, you can't really get a single room. I was, at the time, low to moderate risk. So they put me on the normal labour ward, which had, at the time, one other person on the ward who had only just had her baby a few hours prior or earlier that day. So I was really concerned, or didn't want to bother her, didn't want to upset her, or didn't want to disturb her. And it was the middle of the night. It was 2:30 a.m. by this point. Might even have been 2:45 a.m. Either way, it was the middle of the night. We got sent up to the labour ward. We got placed on the ward in the very, very far corner bed with the smallest amount of space possible. It was very difficult to get up and do anything or move around. It was so hard to get changed. I ended up having to waddle myself to the toilet, which was across the corridor, like out of the labour ward and across the corridor to get to the toilet, which apparently they like it that way so that if you need help, the midwives can access you easily, or they can see what stage you're at, etc, etc. I waddled myself to the toilet to get changed into my pyjamas and get out of my absolutely drenched clothes, and then waddled my way back to the bed. Jason had a recliner, very, very, very cheap recliner chair, or the best quality the NHS could get anyway, to sleep on, which he didn't get very much sleep. We'll not worry about that right now. He tried his best to get to sleep on the recliner, and I tried my best to get settled into bed. Again, avoiding trying to be on my back for obvious reasons, so I primarily just lay on my side. We were encouraged to get as much sleep as possible because labour is very long, it's very intensive, it takes up a lot of energy and can get very tiring, and the pushing is even more tiring. So to try and get as much sleep as possible, because we're not going to get much sleep after this point. Now, while I was actually laid down on my side, the tightening started getting more regular. They were suddenly happening very, very regularly. Like, I could almost count how long there was going to be between each one. Or I could almost time how long there was going to be between each one. They weren't lasting very long. They were lasting a good 20 to 30 seconds in my head, but no one ever counts at the right speed. Sorry, I just have to check him now and again because he has a habit of snuggling his entire face into my armpit or my chest or my jumper. But as I was saying, the tightening started getting really freaking close together, like really, really close together. They were happening very, very frequently. They weren't happening very long, but they were happening frequently. Now, because I actually have a chronic illness where I get a lot of stomach pain anyway, I already knew how to breathe through the pain. It's a case of 4 seconds slow breath in, 5 seconds slow breath out, and keep doing that all the way through until the pain stops. My brain kept on telling me this pain is temporary, you'll get a break from it in a minute, and that really did help. So anytime I got a tightening and it got really tight, it just... That's all I did through the whole thing. Every single tightening I got, 4 second sharp breath in or deep breath in, and then 5 seconds slow, sometimes noisy breath out, just to give me something else to focus on other than the pain. And to be fair, it wasn't that painful. It was more really bad period cramps. I could just breathe through them like I could breathe through period cramps or get through period cramps on a day-to-day basis. Now, as the tightening started getting more regular, I suddenly started needing the toilet. And when I say needing the toilet, I mean a number 2. I needed it very regularly. I really needed a number 2. Now at this point, even having to breathe 4 seconds in and 5 seconds out, I'm mentally counting them and hearing them in my head last to about 30 to 40 seconds. And timings was about 5 to 10 minutes apart, give or take. At this point, I still didn't believe they were contractions. I still thought they were Braxton Hicks tightenings because it was still around my lower back and front of my abdomen. It wasn't high up my stomach. And a lot of people say when you have contractions, it goes from the top of the stomach down. And so there is a very obvious difference between that and Braxton Hicks. But it was the tightenings were all still my lower back and the front of my belly, not from the top. So I still believed at this point they were Braxton Hicks, even though they were 30 to 45 seconds long, and even though they were getting around 5 or just short of 5 minutes apart, or just longer than 5 minutes apart, and I was having to breathe quite strongly through them, I still didn't believe they were contractions at this point. But it's my first pregnancy. I had no idea what contractions even were or what they felt like. Then it's around 4 p.m. I started to need a poo. And I really needed a poo. I got up and I went to the toilet, and I had to go quite quick to the toilet because I really needed a poo. I had to wait until one of the tightenings had stopped. Then I managed to get out of bed, which was not easy. Oh my God, that was not easy. Those NHS beds with the dip in the middle, they are not easy to get out of when you are in the middle of labour. Keep in mind, I didn't believe I was in actual labour at this point, but I was. And they are not easy to get out of that bed when you're in actual labour and your body is aching and you're having to fight with hip pain and your hips wanting to be wide and all this. That was not easy. Trying to get off that bed alone was a challenge in itself. But I got up, I ran to the toilet, didn't think anything of it, said hello to the midwives on the way past. "You all right? Yeah, just nipping the loo." Waddled along, went to sit on the toilet, and I now understand why they say the toilet is the labour throne. because oh my God, did that ramp up the tightenings / contractions, because at this point they were contractions. I didn't know it, the midwives didn't know it, they were still referring to them as tightenings, and so I'm still referring to them as tightenings, but they were full-blown contractions. I did not know this. But when I sat on that toilet and I went to have that poo, the tightenings, contractions, suddenly ramped up. They were 2 to 3 minutes apart and they were lasting at least a minute. They hit me hard. I could still breathe through them. It was damn difficult, but I could still breathe through them. It was a struggle, but I breathed through them. And it was really hard. Do you have any idea how hard it is trying to have a poo when your body is contracting? My God, I had to wait for the breaks between contractions to actually push to have a poo. I'm not even joking. It was so freaking hard. Can I put you down yet? No, okay. Come here, because you're a bit just low there. Hover there instead. Yeah, you can breathe a bit better there. Anyway, I managed to go to the toilet. I think I was stuck in the toilet for about 5 to 10 minutes. And I had at least 3 contractions while, in fact, no, I might even had 4. 3 to 4 contractions while I was stuck in there anyway. I got myself sorted. Once I managed to stand up off the toilet for long enough for the contractions to slow down again, I managed to waddle my way back to the bed, got on the bed, and the contractions slowed back down. They went back down to about 4 to 5 minutes apart, lasting about 30 to 40 seconds. But then I started needing the toilet again 30 minutes later. So I got back up off the bed, difficultly. I went back to the toilet, and it happened again. As soon as I sat down on the toilet, the contractions ramped back up again to 2 to 3 minutes apart, lasting for about a minute. Managed to go to the toilet. After about 5 to 10 minutes in the toilet, waddled my way back to the bed. Lay back down in the bed, but it was much more uncomfortable and much harder to actually lie down through the tightenings at this point. Half an hour later, I think it was about 4:30 at this point, maybe even 4:30. 4:30, it happens again. I need the toilet. Up I get, off to the bathroom, and I go to squats, and I go to toilet again, and they ramp up again. Every single time I went to the toilet, the midwives said to me, do you need any pain relief? Do you need any pain relief? And I was like, no, it's manageable at the minute. I'm just breathing through it. We're all good. Because I've got a bit of a fear with pain relief and the NHS, because I have allergies to certain medications, and it's not uncommon for the NHS to accidentally give me those medications without checking to see if they contain my allergens or whether or not I can actually have them. That's a whole different ball game, and that comes in later in the story. But because of that, I was trying to actually have as little pain relief as possible anyway, because I hadn't done enough research into the pain relief available. But I know the first stage pain relief is just painkillers. But I said, hold off, they're still bearable, they're still no different from period cramps, it's fine, I can handle them. Went to the toilet, they ramped up again, but this time they were 1 to 2 minutes apart, and they were still over a minute while I was in the toilet. So I was in the toilet for a good 5 to 10 minutes. I was really having to battle through these period cramps. At one point, I remember actually having to be stood up against the sink, holding onto the sink for dear life, breathing through and gripping the sink just while I got through the tightening to allow me to pull up my pants. Finally pulled up my pants during a break between the contractions, and then started waddling my way back to the bedroom. About 10 to 5, it happens again. I need the toilet again. So I get up, I waddle back to the toilet, it happens again. The contractions ramp up to about 1 to 2 minutes apart, lasting over a minute. It was not nice. They were really hard to fight through, and they were starting to get difficult to battle through as well, even with the breathing. So I got back to the bed, and once again, they stopped, they calmed down, or I say stopped, they calmed down, went back to being about 4 to 5 minutes apart, give or take. And I thought to myself, do you know what? These are getting a bit hard to bear now. Like, I'm bearing with them. They're still manageable to an extent, but they're getting a bit difficult now. Maybe I should start timing them, and I'd already downloaded a contraction timer on my phone in preparation just in case I needed it. I think I downloaded it on the Monday before, luckily. So I got the contraction timer up and I started timing the contractions. Now, luckily by this point, there hadn't yet been any blood clots. Thank the Lord, which meant I wasn't hemorrhaging. There wasn't anything to worry about. It was just a case of it probably was just a one-off with the flush. Poor Jason during this point was actually so disturbed. Every time I got up out of bed to go to the toilet, he was checking on me. Are you okay? Is there anything going on? Are you all right? Like, yes, I'm fine. I'm just going to the toilet. Leave me alone. Waddle to the toilet, waddle back again. Anytime he heard me breathing quite heavily to try and push through these tightenings, these contractions, he was leaning his hand over and just placing it on me just to let me know he was there and it was okay. At my last toilet run, I decided maybe I should start timing these, and this was about 5 o'clock, so I started timing them. After about 20 to 30 minutes, sure enough, I needed the toilet again. I got up and ran to the toilet and had a look at the timings on my phone. While I was in bed, the contractions were about 3 to 4 minutes apart and lasting about 45 seconds to 1 minute. When I was in the toilet, they were only 1 minute apart, and they were lasting about, in fact no, 1.5 to 2 minutes apart, and they were lasting about 1 minute to 1.5 minutes. They were long, they were hard to get through, but we did it, we managed to push through them. And so as I waddled out of the toilet, I turned to the midwives. I was like, I decided to start timing these tightenings because they're getting a bit regular. It says that I need to let you know how close together they are. And so I told them some of the timings, and all the midwives was just sort of looking at me in disbelief, like, yep. I think she's timing them wrong. Like, they didn't actually say that, but you could see that was going through their head because they were looking at me, listening to what I was saying on the app or what these timings were saying. And the math didn't math, if you know what I mean. It's like, I didn't look like I was having contractions as regular as they were. Apparently, I was looking very chill, very laid back and very calm. So they said to me again, would you like any pain relief? And I thought to myself, these are starting to get a bit difficult to breathe through and they're getting a bit challenging. We'll start with the paracetamol. I know that's step 1 on the pain relief scale. Just let's go with the paracetamol, see how we get on, and if I need more, then we can look at getting more. And they were like, okay, yeah, no problem. Anyway, I went back to my bed and she said, I need to come in 5 minutes to do your vitals anyway, so I'll bring in your paracetamol once your vitals are finished. I was like, yep, fine, not a problem. Whatever we need to do. They went off, or sorry, I went back to bed, and sure enough, within 10 minutes, they were in to strap me up for my vitals. So they put my contraction strap on, they put his heart monitor on, they gave me the blood pressure machine, and I was then just lay there, just going la 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 la, ah, whew, whew, la 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 la, whew, whew, anytime a contraction hit. And oh my God, at this point, I could not lie down. Being lay on my back during that monitoring was agony. Anytime a contraction hit, it was 10 times worse while I was lay on my back. My body was screaming at me to be upright. I have seen several birth vlogs where women who are strapped to machines have been on birth balls, or they've been up against the wall or leaning against the bed, so I knew I was able to stand up. I just had to make sure the monitor stayed in place. I stood up. The monitor slipped slightly, but then found their positionings again and carried on monitoring. Meanwhile, I was braced against the wall, breathing through these tightenings. When they stopped, I had a second, or I was leant against the bed. I was on all fours. I was having to really focus on reducing the pain and reducing the pressure. And again, at this point, I wouldn't say it was painful. It was a severe period cramp with a really strong ache. Like really, really strong ache. Like your whole body, your whole midriff just feels like it's closing in on itself. Like you've got a really tight band and it's just getting tightened and tightened. Like you're getting pulled into a corset almost. For anyone that actually has worn a corset properly and know how tight those things can get, that's what it was like. But it was painful, it was achy, it was so achy. Anyway, the monitoring had to take place for at least half an hour. So I didn't get seen again until 6 p.m. She came back in. She passed me the 2 paracetamol. I necked him straight away. So at this point, I was leant against the bed. She had a look at the monitoring work, and Jason actually told me this part. Apparently, she was looking at the charts to see baby's heart rate and my contractions. Baby's heart rate was completely normal, all fine, no worries. My heart rate, slightly elevated, but fine, absolutely normal. When she was looking at the contractions chart, Jason said her face looked along these lines. I don't know what she read on that chart, but her next words to me was, when did you get admitted again? About 2 a.m. I got admitted. And your waters broke just before? Yeah, about 11:35 my waters broke. Has anyone actually checked you yet, just to see how far along you are? Nope. No one's checked me since I came in. And I was quite difficult to talk to at this point. Like, not difficult, like aggravated, just I was having to breathe quite a lot, and I could still talk through the breathing. It was just very strained, so I wasn't too sure how much she could understand. It was more like, no one's checked me yet, no one. So she's like, are you okay if I just check you? I was like, yeah, go for it, no problem. She's like, I just need to wait in between a contraction, or in between one of these tightenings. I was like, yeah, no problem. So she waited till the breathing stopped and I relaxed a bit. She said, I'm really sorry, I have to have you on your back for this just to give me better access. I was like, okay, fine, I'll bear with it. And sure enough, she waited until between each contraction to check. And she did the check, and I think they spread their fingers to work out how far apart the fingers are is how dilated you are, something like that. And she did the check. I wasn't focusing on what was going on, I was focusing on breathing, but Jason was watching her and saying that she had a bit of a to her face. Don't know how accurate that is, but apparently she was looking a bit like, that can't be right. And sure enough, she said to me, I'm really sorry, I'm gonna have to check again just to be 100% sure. And I was like, fine, do what you need to do. So she waited for another contraction to pass, she checked again. She suddenly had a bit of panic on her face. She said, you're at 8 centimeters, we need to get you gone now. Because apparently I was ready to blow. I was on the verge of giving birth in not even barely 6 hours from my waters breaking. It might have even been 6:30 by this point. I can't remember. My vitals might have been an hour long, not half an hour long, but even so, she gave me and Jason a few minutes to get our bags together, and before we knew it, like 3 or 4 midwives were rushing in with the wheelie chair to come and get me, because apparently I was suddenly high rank emergency in the case of I was dilating fast, really freaking fast. So they got me on the chair and they started collecting all our bits together. We'd actually left my shoes behind. We didn't even realise Jason was so busy grabbing bags, and he was so in a daze of, what, this is happening now? What, this is happening now? What? We were both a bit like, we're going, right, okay. We got our stuff together, we rushed out, and we must have left the shoes on the floor by accident. We rushed out. I was getting wheeled. I was just trying to breathe through the pain. And at this point, I was like, can someone please get me something to throw up into? I am going to be sick. And so they passed me this cardboard bucket, basically. And I just had this cardboard bucket in front of me. And then sure enough, as they started wheeling me towards the labour ward, woof, and loads of vomit just came pouring out. I couldn't stop it. It wasn't happening. The contractions were so strong. It was forcing it up into my stomach, and I was just regurgitating anything that was coming out. First, they actually heard them say she really wanted the nest, so they were going to take me down to the nest. Or as we started heading out of the doors, they said there is no one on the nest at the moment. None of the midwives start for another half an hour, so you're just going to have to go straight to the labour ward. So they started wheeling me across the hall into the labour ward. We get into the labour ward, they start doing the chats with the reception team to work out where I'm going to go, and then just as they were about to go through the doors, someone stops and goes, no, someone's just come in. They said they'll take her, they're on the nest, get her down there now. So next thing you know, I'm getting reversed and we're getting wheeled around, and I'm getting in the lift and they're taking me down and we're going onto the nest, and I'm just thinking in my brain, yes, this is happening. I am going on the nest. This is exactly what I wanted, because part of my birth plan, I really badly wanted to go on the nest. The nest is essentially the labour ward away from home, or the home birth away from home. It's a lot cosier, it's a lot comfier. They have pretty lights to make a better ambiance, that it's a lot more relaxing. There's no fancy hospital bed, it's just like a great big cushion type thing, and they have giant water baths, so you like the chances of a water birth are much more increased. So I'm just thinking, yes, I'm at least, there's a higher chance I'm going to get that water birth. I want that water birth. As we got rushed into the nest, sure enough, they threw me straight into one of the great big fancy nest rooms, and I'm just looking around going, oh my god, I got the nest. I am so freaking happy right now. I didn't care about the contractions. I didn't care about the pain. I was just happy that I got the nest. So as we get into the nest, I think it was about just after 7 o'clock at this point. So it was actually changeover. The midwives that run the nest had only just come in. So they had literally come in to be told there is a woman in that room about to give birth right now. Off you go. So I was a very surprising start to their shift, I have to say. Sure enough, I get wheeled in, and there's the midwives that were on the night with me, and then there were midwives that were taking over that were going to be doing my birth with me. So I had all 4 midwives in with me at one point. I had one on the computer doing all the checky work. I had 2 or 3 of them on me, checking me, what was going on. And as I got wheeled in, they were all passing information between each other and stuff like this. And I remember just whispering through my own breath going, someone fill the pool. Please, someone fill the pool. Fill it now. At first, they didn't hear me. And so I waited a few seconds until there was a break in conversation. I was like, can someone please fill the pool? This time, someone heard me. I was like, what did she say? And then Jason double said it. It's like, she's asking, can someone fill the pool? And one of the midwives said to the other midwife, how far dilated did she say she was? 8 centimeters. Oh god, yes, we need to fill it now. And immediately they started filling the pool, because apparently they usually fill it for someone at 7 centimeters. So the fact that I'd already been 8 centimeters and it was nearly like 20 minutes later, they were rushing to fill this pool. So they were filling the pool. I got escorted to the bed area where I got my vitals checked again. And this time the contractions were really, really strong. I physically could not sit down through them. Anytime I had a contraction, I had to stand up. I was bracing myself against the sink. I was swaying to try and ease the pain in the hips. And I was really deeply breathing through them. Now, at this point, the only pain relief I had was the 2 paracetamol 30 minutes before, when I got told I was 8 centimeters dilated. That's it. That's the only pain relief I'd had up until this point. I had breathed my way through this whole labor, which had only at this point lasted less than 6 hours. From my waters broke at 11:35. At the moment, it was about 7 o'clock. My contractions only started around 2 o'clock. So we hadn't been there long. Sorry, battery was about to die, just had to plug you in. As I was saying, I was having to stand up for contractions, and I remember the contractions were so strong at this point, and I couldn't have any further pain relief. I was past the point of no return, like 7 centimeters I think it is past the point of no return. There is no other pain relief options, you just got to deal with it as best you can. And I remember bending over the sink, gripping it with all my strength, and just saying to Jason, please squeeze my hips. He was like, what do you mean? I was like, squeeze my hips. Hands on either hip, squeeze like your life depends on it. And so he did. One of the midwives guided him through it slightly because she realised he didn't know what I was talking about. I knew what I was talking about, but we hadn't had an opportunity to practice it or for me to explain to him what it was. But sure enough, he got behind me, he put both hands on my hips, and he squeezed like his life depended on it. And I had to say to him, tighter, because I think he was worried he was going to hurt me if he pressed too hard. I was like, no, hard, like as hard as you physically can. Tighter, harder. And he was pushing like his life depended on it, and I still wanted more pressure. And he said to me afterwards that he literally felt like he'd had a full-on bicep workout because he could not put more pressure on me if he tried. He was putting all of his strength into my hips, and it still wasn't enough. But I tell you what, the pain relief, the pressure relief was drastic. Like, that trick works. The whole, your partner squeezing your hips together, one of the best pain reliefs for anyone going through labor. My God, it was amazing. It didn't completely relieve the pain. It didn't completely relieve the pressure of the ache, but my God, it helped. It made it so much more bearable compared to without it. Anyway, my my vitals got finished, and I heard one of the midwives say, right, the bath's ready, you can jump in whenever you're ready. I was like, brilliant, fantastic, there we go. I went to stand up off the bed, because at this point I was back on the bed. I went to stand back up again, and another contraction hit. So I gripped the sink and prepared. But this contraction was different. This contraction, I suddenly felt the need to squat. Like, full on, my body was telling me to drop and drop low. Like low, 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 low. Because I've watched a lot of birth vlogs, and I watched a lot of birth vlogs up until this point, I knew exactly what that meant. I knew that my body wanted me to push, and it wanted me to push now. And I remember thinking, oh no, 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 no. I ain't pushing yet. I ain't pushing till I get in that birth pool. That birth pool has my name written all over it. I want that water birth. They have filled it up. It is ready to go. I am not wasting this opportunity. And it is not easy to fight through the urge to push. It is not easy at all, but it was there. And I waited and I was patient. I was like, bared through it. And the second the contraction was over, you could not get me in that water birth pool fast enough. I was over there. I was in it. And the second I was down, the urge to push started like that. It was immediate. The second I was in that water, the urge to push was there. And can I say, the water birth, that warm water, I was warm, by the way. I was wearing a t-shirt, and I actually had to take the t-shirt off after about 5 minutes in the water because I was overheating. It was so warm. Because they have to have it at like body temperature. But my God, the relief of pressure and pain when you get into that water, or your weight gets lifted so you don't feel heavy. It takes off so much more of the pressure because it helps your muscles relax. It just makes things so much more comfortable. Oh my God. It was relieving. Like, even though the pushing had started, I was so much more comfortable in that water pool. And I knew I would, because I'm more comfortable in water anyway. I'm relaxed more in water. But once I got into that pool, oh my God. It was like a wave of happiness had just hit me, like, oh, thank God for that. Because so much of the ache had gone, so much of the pain had gone, so much of the relief had gone. I was like, oh, thank God, this is heaven. And like I said, the pushing started pretty much immediately. The urge to push hit me like a freaking brick wall. The second I dropped down into the water, I was pushing. I wasn't a quiet pusher. I wasn't screaming. Jason seems to claim I was, but I wasn't. I wasn't screaming, but I was growling and roaring. Like, some primal noises came out of me during that pushing. Like, really deep, guttural, primal noises came out of me during that pushing. Every single push was... Never heard myself make those noises before. Jason told me that he actually saw that I was pushing the second I dropped in, and he rushed over and tried to grab my hands, or offered his hands to, or reached out to grab me, but I was not there. Like, I was there, I was conscious, I was aware of everything going on, I could feel everything going on, I can still remember everything that happened and all the pain and all the sensation, but I just knew that those hands were Jason's. I knew he was there. I didn't know what position or anything else he was in. And I just remember he put his hands into mine, and I just gripped down. My hands just felt something touch them and then went bang. Didn't know what they were, didn't know what it was, didn't know who it was, just bang. And I'd gripped down on his thumb. And apparently I'm a strong person, but I'm not as strong as Jason. But apparently I nearly broke his thumb because I was grabbing so damn hard in order to push through the pain. My whole body was just woof. And I was gripping his thumb so hard, I very nearly broke them. And apparently he was crying, nearly crying just from the pain in his thumb. Oh, I felt so bad afterwards. The most embarrassing part? I say most embarrassing part, I didn't care at this point. This baby was coming out of me. I didn't care how it happened. The first 2 pushes, I pooed. I pooed in the water pool. Whatever was left in me, baby was pushing it out first. It's like, you need to get out my way because I am coming and I need you gone. The first 2 pushes, I did poo. And they very kindly floated up to the top of the water, and the midwife just fished them out and pretended it didn't happen, which I was very grateful for. And it's a little embarrassing to poo in front of your partner and in front of midwives, but in the middle of labour, you do not care. You do not give a damn. Your body has far more important things to worry about, and pooing in front of people is the last thing on your mind. Now, the position I was in during the actual labour in the birth pool, I was on my knees and I was up against one of like the resting areas on the birth pool so that Jason could easily reach me. It's also supposedly a better position for birth in general because you're letting gravity help you in some sense, and it's also better to allow you to maneuver your knees and your hips to where you need them to be. It's very hard to know where your knees and hips need to be. My body just knew. It just knew. It knew where it needed to be. It knew what it wanted to do. So the whole time while I was pushing, every single push, my body told itself what position to be in. It told me if I wanted wide knees, if I wanted narrow knees, if I needed bent knees or split knees, or if my knees needed to be together. My body told me where it wanted me to position itself. I just listened. I just said, you know what? You seem to know what you want. You seem to know what you're doing. You're doing everything right from what I've read online, on what I've seen online and what I've heard from midwives. Just do your thing. So that's what I did. I just let my body do exactly what it needed to do. Now, during the second push, or between the first and second pushes, I did release Jason's hands because my whole body relaxed. Oh my God, the brief rest you get between pushes is so different from labor itself. It is so much more restful. Your body can rest so much better than between contractions because it's literally like very intense pushing contractions and then nothing until the next push hits a few minutes later. And Jason repositioned his hands so that I had hold of his whole hand and his fingers. Apparently I did a bit of damage because every push I was grabbing down. I couldn't stop myself. I couldn't help it. It was just happening. But I was really grabbing down on his hands, and apparently they were starting to squish a little bit and a couple of the knuckles may have cracked. I was pushing and I just let my body do its thing. I listened to it every single step of the way. I roared like crazy. There was some swearing. Apparently I cracked a couple of jokes. I can't remember what those jokes were, but apparently I cracked a couple of jokes and it made the midwives laugh quite a bit. But we got through it. Now, in between so many pushes, I think it had to be between every 3 pushes or something like that, they had to check baby's heart rate. Now, this was very difficult to do in a birth pool, but there was ways to do it. What I did to try and help the midwives is between every push where they need to check his heart rate, I would grab Jason to help me pull me up, and I would lean on the side so that they had better access to the belly. And then anytime a push restarted, I dropped back down because I didn't get a choice. Like my knees wanted to bend. So anytime push started, my body dropped. When they need to check his heart rate again, I relaxed and I got back up, and then I dropped back down again anytime I needed to push. Oh, you're being such an angel right now. You enjoying this story? Has the story put you to sleep? I'm surprised the story's put him to sleep. As the pushing continued, it's really weird. When they say push through your bum as if you're having a poo, that is exactly what it feels like. It literally feels like you're trying to poo out the biggest poo of your life. I'm not even joking. That is genuinely what pushing feels like. When they're actually coming out of you, it literally feels like you're trying to push out a watermelon of a poo. It's the exact same location where the pushing happens. It's the exact same feeling. It's insane. You can genuinely feel when they start going down the birth canal, especially when that head starts going down the birth canal, because the change in pressure on your hips and on that area is just insane. You can really feel the stretch. At that point, a lot of online stuff or up-to-date research and online stuff says to bend your knees inwards because that opens the bottom of your pelvis to help it pass through. And weirdly enough, that's exactly what my body was trying to do. Once he'd actually reached the birth canal and past that point, my body was automatically trying to bend my knees inwards. So that's what I did. I was literally giving birth with my knees almost inwards and my feet pointing out, and it worked. He was coming out really smoothly. The midwives didn't have to give me any advice. They didn't have to give me any tips. They didn't need to tell me when to push. They didn't need to tell me how to adjust or reposition. Because in their own words, whatever you're doing, it is working and it's doing it right. He's not stressed. His heart rate is fine. Everything's going perfectly. Just keep doing what you're doing. Fine, that's exactly what I'll do. So that's exactly what I did. I listened to my body. Every time it wanted to push, I pushed. If it wanted to squeeze its knees inwards, I let it do that. And he very, very quickly came out. Every single push was super effective. When it actually come to him crowning, that was an experience. That was an experience indeed. I kept on trying to ask the midwives for updates, like, can you just tell me where he's up to? Give me an idea. Like, I need a visual in my head of where he's at, what's going on. And so they let me know when he was in the birth canal. They let me know when they could see the crowning of his head. And the very first comment when he started to crown, oh my freaking God, he's got so much hair. And that's been everyone's comment ever since. He's got so much hair. Ever since you've been born. That's the first thing people comment on, isn't it? Your hair. Yeah, I got a little smile for that. Proud of your hair, aren't you? Yeah. You are. You're proud of your hair. But that was the very first thing they said. Oh my God, he's got so much hair. Which instantly was like, yep, he looks like Jason. Because Jason was exactly the same when he was born. He had a full head of hair. So I knew instantly. I was like, yep. That's why my acid reflux has been so bad, because I've had really bad acid reflux through the pregnancy, really freaking bad. That explained it. He had a lot of hair, didn't he? And still has a lot of hair. It's thinned out a little bit, but he has a lot of hair. Yeah, my little cutie. He's smiling a lot more now. Not long after he crowned, I felt the ring of fire. And my God, it is a ring of fire. It is a ring of fire. But for me, it wasn't so much a ring. It's like, it's very much a burning sensation. It is a really strong burning sensation. And it's specifically when their nose, like their eyebrows and their nose are starting to pass out of you. Because their nose pushes against your urethra. And it's that pressure as it pushes the urethra back that causes the sort of burning sensation. That's where I felt it most. I could literally feel his nose so clearly on, like, pushing against my urethra and pressing it back. And my God, it burnt. And the midwives did say to me, when you start to feel that, you will literally have a moment where the pushing goes on for longer than it has been, because your body just wants that bit gone. Like, it knows where it's up to. It just wants that bit out. And that is exactly what happened. Is when my body started to feel that burn from the ring of fire, I went from suddenly pushing at least twice per session. So it was like push, quick break, push, and then long break, to I need to get this out, push, push, push. Sometimes a fourth push, not quite enough, quick break. And then you have to sit there with the ring of fire embering away until the next push, when you can start the ring of fire again and you're pushing and pushing and pushing. But after, I think it was the second or third push of the ring of fire, his head finally popped out. And can I say, when you're having a water birth and bodies float, it is a very weird sensation when their head is out and their body isn't yet, and their head is just bobbing against your bum. That's a really weird sensation. It's very surreal, because a part of your brain is thinking, is he drowning? No, because his lungs aren't out yet. He hasn't had the indication to start breathing yet. He hasn't touched the air. He doesn't have the indication to start breathing yet. He's literally been in a body of water for the last 9 months. He's fine. But you do get that little thought of, is he okay? Like, no, he's not there yet. I've just got this giant thing bashing against my bum. It's really weird. It was really weird. We're starting to get hungry. We're starting to get hungry. Was that not a nice memory? I know, we've nearly finished with the story, Baba. We've nearly finished with the story. I was so happy because I knew in my head, one more push. His head is out. The hardest part is over. The worst part is over. One more push and his body just slides out and it's done. Just one more push. That's all there's left. And that is, like, once the head is out, it's so easy to get the rest of them out. The midwife said the same. Jason said the same, just one more push, you're nearly there. And Jason was so good through the whole thing. Your daddy was so good. You're getting hungry. Yeah, we're getting hungry. You miss Daddy. Daddy's at work today, isn't he? Oh, my little potato. We're getting hungry. Hungry. Yeah, getting hungry. Oh, so terrible. So terrible. So hungry. Immediately silenced. We have to feed him a certain way because he eats a bit too fast. Sure enough, one more push and he flew out of me. And I mean flew out of me. Apparently my pushes were strong. So fast, in fact, that the midwife actually had to sort of dive almost into the birth pool in order to catch him, to push him through so that I could grab him. To the point that Jason told me that her glasses fell off into the birth pool just as he came out, and the birth pool flooded with my blood. Yeah, I know, you bent it, hang on. Because guess what? A normal part of birth is that your 9 months of period blood building up to keep baby safe comes out with baby in a large flush. Not all of it, but a good chunk of it. So her glasses fell into the water that was very quickly turning red. They pushed baby between my legs and said, quick, grab him. So I literally didn't even blink. I just looked down. My instinct was just grab up and put him on my chest, and there he was. The pain was gone. The aches was gone. The acid reflux was immediately gone. Everything was gone. The pain, the agony, everything. I was just suddenly human again, and so happy and relaxed and just in a state of, there's a human here. There's a baby suddenly here. And I remember actually looking down at him and thinking, are you actually mine? Because he didn't look anything like me. When I was born as a baby, I was bald. I was bald for the first 12 months of life, and then I had very blonde hair. I was pale white skinned, and I was quite a chunky baby, but not huge. Whereas he was a big boy. He had a full head of dark hair. He had olive coloured skin, same as his dad. His eyes were just fascinating to look at. He's got the most amazing eye colour. He doesn't have one specific colour. He's got like the outside grey of my eyes, and then he's got the internal amber of Jason's eyes. It's such a unique colour. Absolutely gorgeous. But because he didn't look anything like me when I was born, it took me a moment, especially the olive skin. I knew Jason had olive skin when he was born, but I was just sort of looking down going, you look nothing like me. Are you sure you're the baby that just come out of me? But there was no denying it. He was still attached to me by the umbilical cord. I was in a state of bliss. I was so happy. All the pain had gone, all the stress had gone, and I had the perfect birth. Or what I was hoping for. I had the perfect birth. My waters broke at 11:35. I was admitted to hospital at 2 o'clock. My contractions were manageable. I was able to just breathe through them with only 2 paracetamol, which didn't even have chance to get taken into effect by the time I actually had to get rushed down to the labour ward or down to the nest. I got a water birth, which is everyone dreams of a water birth, and I understand why. It was heaven. It was bliss. It took away so much pain and so much more stress. It made things so much more comfortable and relaxed for me personally. I was so grateful that I got to experience a water birth and got to get a water birth. And I was just sat in the water with my little baby, enjoying our hour of happiness, wasn't we? Oh, hang on, you're dribbling everywhere. I was just enjoying my moment of bliss with my little nan, and Jason was behind us, I think in a bit of shock, and he was so good through the whole birth. He was talking to me, supporting me, telling me I was doing a great job, just keeping my spirits up, just telling me it was okay, that just a few more pushes, I was doing great. He was brilliant. He was so supportive, and he was so great with the midwives and making sure that I got my requests listened to, and if I was feeling a bit rough, he was making sure to advocate for me. He was great. He was such a great partner. Then after our several minutes of new baby bliss, I was still sat in the birth pool by this point. I remember looking at the birth pool and thinking, oh my freaking God, a shark, a crocodile and a piranha just had a feast in here. because it was red. It was really red, but it's hard to tell how much blood was in it because blood and water just blend wonderfully, but it literally looked like something had just been massacred. I'm not even kidding. It was so much red. Anyway, we had our baby Bliss. They said, right, you've had your time now, we need to cut the umbilical cord. I was like, what about delayed cord clamping? Aren't you meant to wait until the cord is completely white? And he said it is. And I'm looking at his cord going, no, there's still at least one vein running through it. There's still one line of colour running through it. But apparently I had been in the water for quite a long time. Like, sense of time had completely gone with me. I had no idea how long I'd been sitting there cuddling him, enjoying my little moment of bliss. But they said, we can't leave you any longer. We need to cut the cord. It's already been over time. And I'm still looking at the cord thinking, there's still one thing of red running through that. Are you sure? And they were like, yeah, we need to cut it. It's like, you've had your delayed now. Your class is delayed cord clamping. I'm like, still don't think it's white, but okay, fine, not a problem. And they asked Jason, do you actually want to cut the cord? Because I always said to him, it's up to him. I said to him since day one, it's up to him. It's his choice at the end of the day. He doesn't have to do it. If he wants to do it, he can. They gave him the offer and he said yes. So he ended up cutting the cord and they said, right, come on. We need to get, sorry to keep you any longer. We need to get you out the bath. So I passed little Minion over to one of the midwives who passed him to Jason. We actually decided his name based on that. We had a list of names available and I'm not going to list them off because one of them is actually his name and we are trying to keep his name off social media just in case he wants a bit of privacy when he's older. We're leaving the decision of being on social media and on the internet up to him. But for security and privacy reasons, we are keeping his name pretty secret for that reason, or at least offline. But when they passed into Jason, Jason said his first words to him was hello and then his name. And that's how he got his name. He said it was so natural, it was so easy, it just felt right. It came out without me even thinking about it. And that's how we ended up choosing his name off the names off the list. It was the first name that came to Jason naturally. It worked. It worked so well. But I was so happy because I got my perfect birth. I really did. It was a quick and fast labour, which you can't guarantee. That is just luck of the draw. But it was a quick and fast labour, and I do think that all the exercise and the stretches and the hip strengthening that I did prior to birth, like all the way through my pregnancy, did help with how quick and easy and pain manageable the labour was. I don't know that for certain, but I do attribute some of the ease of labour to the exercise that I did. You need to burp. You need to burp. As I was saying, they passed the little man over to Jason and helped me out of the birth pool. And they were all commenting on how energetic I was as I got out of the pool. Apparently, most people when they're at that point of labour are so exhausted and knackered and falling over, and I'm just sat there going, yep, come on, get me out. Still quite full of energy, but I put it down to an adrenaline rush. I think it was newborn adrenaline or newborn high was just keeping me in a state of woohoo, yay. But again, it could also be attributed to the exercise I did during pregnancy, who knows. Like I said, I experienced the perfect birth in my opinion, or everything I wanted from birth. It was quick, it was easy, it was a short labour, which again, no one can guarantee. He came out super easy. I got my birth on the nest. I got the water birth I wanted. Everything was perfect. Until it wasn't. Unfortunately, this is where things spiral. Or spiraled. Now the problem is, this video is already an hour long and it's a lot to sit through as it is. So I'm actually going to make a second video explaining exactly what happened after the birth. So I'm going to actually leave this video here on a I had the perfect birth sort of bliss story. But if you actually want to know the dramatic ending to this story, go have a look at the next video, which will be out hopefully not long after this one, but I will leave a link to it at the end of the video for anyone who is interested. And I'll also leave a link in the description below just in case anyone wants to find it that way or doesn't want to wait till the very end to actually click on it. But that is the actual birth story. That is what happened up until I actually gave birth to him. Like I said, there were some after events, but that is a completely different story. It is obviously birth related because it is post-birth, but I will give it its very own video because I've already been talking for way too long and I need to look after little man before I record anymore. So thank you very much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video and thank you very much for listening to my story. Bye bye.